let's talk about something we all feel, but are pretty much told to hide. We're going to dive into our most powerful, primal, and totally misunderstood emotions. The ones that, well, just might hold the key to our greatest strength.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Have you ever felt that hot surge of anger and, immediately felt ashamed? Or tried to just shove a feeling down because it felt, too intense, too impolite? Yeah, we're taught that these feelings are wrong, that they're a sign we're out of control. But what if that's not the whole story at all?
Okay, so check this out. This quote kind of stops you in your tracks, right? Evil is good out of its proper context. It suggests that the forces we're so quick to label as bad aren't inherently evil. Maybe they're just powerful energies that have shown up in the wrong place at the wrong time without any real guidance.
So let's really get into it. We're going to start by exploring why we're so incredibly uncomfortable with these feelings and what actually happens when we try to just bottle them all up.
This right here is so important. See, it's not always the initial rage that throws us off balance. It's that extra layer of judgment we pile on top. We get angry that we're angry, we feel sad that we're sad. It's this vicious cycle, and it just completely clouds our thinking and turns what could have been a fleeting spark into this out-of-control wildfire that just keeps on burning. And here's the kicker. It isn't just about the so-called negative emotions. We're taught to tone down everything. Don't be too loud, don't be too joyful, don't be too passionate. And when we push down all these natural, instinctive parts of ourselves, they don't just vanish into thin air. Nope, they pop back up, usually in the most surprising and often, inconvenient ways. So if we're so disconnected from this power, where do we look for a user manual? Well, turns out, ancient myths gave us some incredible archetypes to help us understand this raw energy. So let's meet the fierce goddesses.
First up, you've got Sekhmet from ancient Egypt. She was literally created from the sun god's fire to bring humanity back into balance, but she got completely lost in the bloodshed and almost wiped out the entire human race. And then you have Kali in Hinduism. She was born to defeat a demon that couldn't be killed. So what'd she do? She drank all his blood. But then her own thirst for destruction took over. You see the pattern? In both stories, a divine power meant to restore balance became a force of pure, unchecked chaos.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that these goddesses aren't evil. Not at all. They represent a power that is both protective and destructive at the same time. In fact, their fierceness comes from a deeply protective, almost motherly place. But, and this is the important part, without balance, without the wisdom to know when to act and when to stand down, that amazing protective power becomes a total wrecking ball. Okay, this brings up a huge question, right? If this power is so primal, why are we in our modern world so terrified of it? Well, the answer might actually lie in a massive cultural shift that happened way back in our history. You know, at our very core, we're all wired for safety. It's our deepest need. So when the world feels unpredictable and chaotic, our first instinct is to try and control it. We try to map everything out, make it all predictable. Why? Because predictability feels safe. And that desperate need to create order is a direct response to a very deep fear of the unknown. So, how did we get here? Well, one really compelling theory points to this dramatic shift in human history. Just picture early human cultures, often peaceful, revering the earth as a kind of divine, nurturing mother. But then things changed. Catastrophic climate shifts meant the world wasn't so abundant anymore. Suddenly there was scarcity, competition. This gave rise to conquering cultures and new skyfather gods who valued order and conquest above all else. You could almost see it as a kind of collective trauma that taught us to fear nature, to fear chaos, and to fear that wild, untamed feminine energy. And you see this story play out in one of the oldest myths we tell, the hero who slays the dragon. That dragon, it represents primordial chaos, the wildness of nature, the great unknown. So the myth of conquering the dragon, it's really the story of our culture's deep-seated attempt to control these untamed forces, both out there in the world and inside of ourselves. Okay, so we've talked history, we've talked myths, but let's bring it back to us, right here, right now. If this fierce, powerful energy has been pushed down for centuries, how in the world do we reclaim it in a way that's healthy and balanced and actually constructive? This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not about just letting rage run wild, like Sekhmet or Kali. It's about finding that razor's edge, that fierce grace. How do we learn to actually wield this power with wisdom? Thankfully, there's a pretty clear roadmap. First up, acceptance. Just letting yourself feel what you feel, without that second arrow of shame. Then, and this is the real key, comes discernment. This is learning the difference between righteous, necessary action and just, needless reaction. After that, we build resilience, gently pushing our edges when we feel strong and resourceful, not when we're already breaking down. And finally, community, finding your people, your Sangha, a group where you feel safe enough to be real and truly supported.
This gets at a totally different way of thinking about strength. See, we often think we need to build this rigid armor to face life's challenges. But armor? It's heavy, it's stiff, it comes from a place of fear. The alternative is to cultivate a flexible, adaptive kind of resilience. This approach comes from trust. It doesn't try to control the unknown. It prepares you to dance with it, to be fluid and confident no matter what comes your way.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. What if we've had it all wrong this whole time? What if the chaos we're so afraid of, both out in the world and inside ourselves, what if it isn't a monster that needs to be slain? What if it's actually the fertile ground from which everything new is born? A field of infinite possibility, just waiting for us to learn how to dance.